Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 110. I'm Enigmaeus and today it's one of the best kinds of episodes. It's a blueprint video. The ship is complete. The Cetorhinus capital vessel is complete. So now we're going to do a tour of it so that those of you who might be interested in grabbing the blueprint will have some sort of reference in terms of what you're getting yourself into. It's a very large ship. It's going to cost you quite a significant amount of resources in order to build it if you're building it in a survival scenario. But we're not going to spend a lot of time going over each minute detail. It's mostly intended as a fairly quick tour so that you can see some of the features, what's going on. You can see the whole ship in the frame now because we're standing quite a ways back from it. It's a very, very large ship, and I don't want to be misleading when I kind of show you this and have you thinking that it's just this little dinky thing. It's quite big. So we're going to head on down. We're going to get inside the ship. We're going to do the inside first, and then we're going to do a view from the outside of the ship from the chase camera in the cockpit because it's a little bit easier to see things from a macro level when we go from that view. You can see here, as we get closer, it's actually got quite a bit of lighting on the outside. It's a fairly attractive ship, especially in space when it's just kind of sitting there doing its thing, especially on the shadow side. I had a little bit of an argument with myself over whether I wanted to do this during the day or at night, and I decided that I was going to do it at night because it's easier to start off with things inside the ship when they're very atmospheric and dark, and then use a flashlight if we want to show you things in a little bit brighter detail than it is to have everything on the inside bright and then trying to make it dark so that you can understand how atmospheric it is. For example, this is the only entrance to the ship from the ground level. You can see we've got ramps here that are to assist hover vessels in getting into the hangar, but also make it very easy to get to this door. I can understand that a lot of people would feel that this isn't adequate in terms of access to the ship from the lower levels, and for those people who want to put more doors, various different places, and set things up to their liking, obviously their blueprint, their materials, their business, what they wanted to do. In my case, I just wanted something simple and easy to put into place and get done, and this is what it ended up being. So we go inside, and new feature for my capital vessel builds, we actually have defense turrets in this one. And you can see as soon as you walk in from the door, there's a turret that would like to shoot at you if you don't belong here. There's a rail to make it a little bit more difficult to get to it, but I mean, you can shoot over it with a gun. It's not that big of a deal. But the rail, unless you want to destroy it, kind of corrals you in a certain direction. So you've got this turret here, and then you think, nah, I don't want to wreck that rail, so we'll come up this way, and there's another one with another turret. So a little bit of a double whammy. Very frustrating if you're coming in by yourself, trying to get up to no good. We're in the hangar, which you can see. We've got the flashlight, which apparently is extremely powerful. The hangar is very large, and by design, I wanted to make sure that we could fit as many ships into the hangar as possible. I build large ships. Hover vessels, small vessels, the ones that I build are fairly large, and I can fit 6 of my current hover vessel design in this hangar without any difficulty. I put a repair bay right here, as indicated by the little symbol, and also the arrows offering a subtle reminder to people once you're done repairing your ship to move it off of the repair bay to the side or front so that other ships can use it as well. It's protected on the underside by the only asymmetrical component on the ship. There's a layer of combat steel on the underside of the hangar specifically covering off the underside of the repair bay, just to add a little bit of extra protection. And then we've got the truss blocks. Since the last episode, I painted them. They're orange. But it's the exact same orange that I used on the elevator blocks here. The truss blocks just come out much darker, which is not necessarily a big deal. The main thing that I was going for was just a little bit of extra contrast, so they stand out just a little bit compared to all of the gray everywhere else. We got lots of lights in here. If we go to the elevator blocks and up, we can get a better view of the hangar and its relative size. We'll get up as high as we can go before things go crazy. So you can see there's the hover vessel. There's the repair block and all the different places. The rectangles are just rectangles that I drew on the ground because in my mind it was representative of the ships that I built in terms of their size. If your ships aren't that big, it just means you can hold more in here without having to worry about whether or not you're going to have enough space. Very big hangar. Very, very big. So we go up the elevator and across this walkway along the ceiling, and we come up here, and now we're in the main superstructure of the ship itself, above the hangar. And this is sort of like the main bridge area. We've got a central cockpit here. I'm going to get rid of this flashlight for now, because this main area, this main deck of the ship is where most of the atmospheric lighting is. And I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. So, like I say, if it's really, really dark and I need to show you what's going on, we can pull out the flashlight. But to give you an idea for how the ship feels when you're running around in space or at night, this gives you a good idea. So this is everything that you need in a survival environment is in this closed-off glass chamber. We're going to talk about specifically how closed off it is momentarily. We've got a med bay, which I tend to use quite a bit when I'm jumping around off ships this size, because you always take a little bit of damage no matter how well you time the jetpack. We've got an oxygen station, we have a food processing station, and a fridge. So health, oxygen, and food, the three things that you currently need in the survival game, all readily taken care of in this little enclosed area. Now when we get into the different kinds of suits that you can build for different purposes, and the ability to pressurize areas in the ship so that they have oxygen whether the atmosphere outside does or doesn't, there's room to add whatever you need in order to support those things as well. But the one thing that would require a very minor retrofit is if you wanted to pressurize this area, because as I understand it, these transparent doors, I've got one in the back here and one in the front as well. These don't count as a sealing door. You can easily replace these with a door that would seal, and this whole area, I think, should be something that you can pressurize. You might have to adjust up here with the elevator in order to allow that to be pressurized as well, but it's all minor details in order to support having the area pressurized if that's what you wanted. I'm just not playing in the version of the game that even has all that stuff in yet, so I'm not too worried about making sure that it's 100% compatible. We're going to go to the utility area next, which is at the back of this area. And again, very atmospheric when it's dark, because I have only limited lighting in this area. By design, you can see there's so many things that glow. We don't necessarily need a lot of lighting for you to get an idea of where you are and not run into things. But we're going to turn on the lights a little bit so that you can get a better view of what's going on. We'll start off to the sides. Ammunition containers, 7 of them, and if you look above each one is room for another one, so you can have up to 14 ammunition containers on this side and another 14 on the other side. It's basically the exact same thing over there as what we have over here, all enclosed in combat steel. They have their own little enclosure here that I built, so that if you do end up with a hole punched in your hull, you've got a little bit of extra protection for your ammunition containers before things start to explode and spread damage all over the ship. So that's kind of hopefully a benefit there. Down here is where all of the RCS units are. Fairly accessible. There's no lighting down here at all, because how often do you really need to interact with your RCS units? There's a total of 45 on this side of the ship and 45 on the other side. Originally the ship had a total of 30, and as I finished off the hull, the turning characteristics, the pitch, yaw, the roll, and all that other stuff were really not very good. So I added 60 more, and they're quite a bit better. It's very manageable now for its size to be able to navigate where you want to go without having to, exercise all kinds of patience waiting for things to happen. So a total of 90 RCS units. That's quite a bit. We've got these containers, basic containers here. They have this neat sort of lighting effect in the corners that I really like. So I didn't necessarily feel compelled to put lighting in this area because we've got those. I came up with this theme, this design theme for areas where you can do useful things, I guess you could say. If you want to access a container, you've got this little area here. The orange with the crosshatches on the bumpy texture indicates an area where you can stand and have access to something useful. So we've got it over here for the ammunition containers, got it over here for the advanced constructors. We've got 6 of those and room for plenty more if you wanted more. We've got it over here for the fuel tanks, more fuel tanks, the warp drive tank, fuel tanks over here. You get the idea. Anywhere where you can stand and have access to something useful, it has that specific design feature, just as an indication in case for whatever reason you ran past something and didn't recognize it was something useful. We have 4 generators, I've never encountered a situation whether I was, ascending off the planet, landing on the planet, moving around in space, moving around on the planet. I've never encountered a situation where the ship wanted to draw more power than the generators were capable of delivering. So 4 is, I would suspect, adequate for anything that you might want to do, and you also have room to add more if you wanted to. So it's one of those things. There's plenty here already, but if you want more, you can do that. There's the warp drive up there. Despite what the texture tells you, that's all combat steel and armored glass. So you can come up here if you want, and you can miss the jump, because I made it up there earlier and I didn't have all of this stuff going on. I guess I have to go up from the front. We're not even going to bother. If you really wanted to get up there and stand next to your warp drive, you can. You have to go through the front to do it. You can't do it from the side. And if you wanted to stand underneath and look up at the donut, you can do that too. You can even see the light above this whole thing. It's just glass and combat steel to try and make things look interesting. There are doors. Very strange places for doors. If you go through these doors, you can get to some of the thrusters so that you can do repairs from inside the ship. This here is a thruster, this is a thruster, this is a thruster. They're all really, really big thrusters, and so I put access points where you can get in here and do the repairs. These are the descent thrusters, the ones that push the ship down, and then these ones are lateral thrusters, and you can't reach all the lateral thrusters. We don't have direct access to all of the rear thrusters, but you could create an opening through here and give yourself access to them if you wanted to, and that's another option. So, as I've mentioned in the past, it's kind of nice to have access to important ship features from the inside to repair. So if you're in a combat situation, you don't necessarily have to go out into harm's way to repair critical systems. So now we're going to turn this off because it's fairly important. Starting to get really into the atmospheric bits with the lighting, and I was really quite happy with the way this turned out. The shadows on the ceiling there from the glass, and then over here we've got blue lighting and light blue lighting. We've got the Triforce symbol. There was just a way everything came together on this wall. There was a triangle, and it was made up of triangles. So by using different textures, we came up with the Triforce symbol, and then I was so amused with myself, I put a light there so it was even easier to see. I don't think Link ever had anything to do with the construction or use of this ship, but sometimes we do silly things to amuse ourselves when we're involved in these gigantic projects. If a person is truly offended by it, they can just paint over it. We've got this walkway here. Kind of an important walkway, and I remember commenting when we were looking at this original tunnel or hallway, depending on how you look at it, and saying that it was going to be, whether or not I was happy with the overall feel for this section was going to be more a function of the lighting than anything I could do with paint or textures. And it ended up being the case by having this blue lighting and sort of adjusting the intensity and the range of the lighting going down this hallway, and then you can see the red lighting at the end already. Very, very atmospheric. And because it's nighttime, it's pitch black in the corners down here with the shadows. You can see it's not the only place in the main deck that's pitch black, but you come down here through this blue hallway and into this area, and this is the gunner's cockpit, which is, we spoke about this previously. The whole purpose of having this cockpit up here is so that I could gauge very easily how close it was to the fixed barrel guns that are attached to the ship in this forward section to make it easier to aim and be accurate and not waste ammunition on misses. So that was kind of the idea. We put this whole front section together, and then I decided, well, the only use I can come up with for it is to make it a gunner's cockpit. So that's what we did. We've got this red atmospheric lighting going on. We've got the radar. There's an enemy ship. It's going up and down menacingly, and we've got all of that information over there that's going by too fast for us to read. But that's okay, because we're just here to shoot stuff. We're not here to read displays. Down here, this is, I noticed this after it was built, and I was just kind of messing around, but this is like the corner of Black Doom. It's a very large area. I mean, you could actually put useful stuff down there if you had useful stuff you wanted to put down there. There's lots of room for it, but at night, it's just blackness. And this is what actually convinced me to do this walkthrough at night, was so that you could see just how black and atmospheric this is, despite the fact that you can see pretty clearly what's going on just around here. Kind of neat. I like that. It's more of a credit for the developers for setting things up in a way that allows us to do interesting things. than anything else. Now, if we were to take the under section, instead of going on the walkway, if we were to go under it, we would come to this area here, and these are the fixed barrel guns, or some of the fixed barrel guns that we were talking about, and we can see their proximity to the cockpit is just a few blocks away. So it makes it that much easier to get a good line on your target when the cockpit is showing you where the crosshair is, and then the guns are aiming straight ahead as well. So they're only going to be a few blocks below in terms of their accuracy. Wherever you shoot with the crosshair, the guns are going to hit a few blocks below, which is pretty decent. The farther away you are, the less you're going to notice the difference. So I'm happy with it. I don't know that I would necessarily keep this color for the guns, but again, I chose to keep this area underneath here because it gives us this access to repair if we need to. This was originally put in place when I was still constructing this area underneath here, and I wasn't even 100% sure what I wanted to put here. And then once these guns were in place, I just decided to leave it with the little ramp and the access. So that's the main deck for the interior of our capital vessel. To get to the upper decks, we just have to go through here and to the elevator. This is the same elevator we came up from the hangar. We just have to continue going up this way to get to the upper decks. And the first one we come across is the agricultural deck. As you can see, we've got all kinds of vegetables. This is my preferred setup for the garden. I need to plant more tomatoes, which I will do once I harvest these and make the seedlings. And then I will have 30 of each kind of vegetable. So every time I do a full harvest, I'll get enough vegetables to make 30 canned vegetables, which is a pretty significant amount of food, no matter who you are and what you're trying to do. If you make the canned vegetables as fast as you harvest the vegetables, you will never run out of food. It's mathematically impossible to run out of food. Now, over here, space cave beans, so you can make space coffee. Very handy if you like to sprint around when you're on foot. Drink the coffee as you go to kind of keep the stamina up and keep going. And lots of room to grow other things. I could grow more coffee beans. I could grow other things entirely. All of the lighting is in place. All you need to do with the growing plots is plant what you want to plant, and it'll grow. It's all done for you, taken care of. Also, while I'm here, I wanted to just point out the importance of having this whole area here is actually really, really open and easy to get around in. You can see we're going under this walkway. For all practical intents and purposes, when you're moving around, it's just one big, wide open, flat area. Then we've got this walkway up here. It just, I was a little bit concerned because it does honestly kind of look a little cluttered with that walkway there, that it might put people off thinking that it was going to be a problem, but it's really not. So it's not that big of a deal. The sun is coming up from the looks of things. You can see this is the forward area of the ship. That bulbous area down in front is where the gunner's cockpit was. We've got an artillery turret on top and one underneath as well. If you want to take control of an artillery turret and shoot at things manually while you're in space, you can do that, or you can set them to auto fire on specific targets. Like, for example, take out the core of a space station, you'll have 2 artillery turrets doing the damage. It's a pretty substantial amount of firepower for that kind of purpose. And as always, as far forward on the ship as I could reasonably try to get them, so that you can take advantage of the range on the artillery pieces without getting blasted in the face while you're waiting for the artillery to fire. This is the upper observation area. Some things just to make stuff look a little bit more interesting up here. There's no actual utility blocks or any other useful reason to be in this room, except because maybe you wanted to be looking around up here. And also, this is the access to the top of the ship, if for whatever reason you needed access to the top of the ship. More turrets. The crossfire, the dreaded crossfire orientation. You're trying to get rid of this guy and the other guy's shooting you in the back of the head. So you turn to shoot this guy and this guy shoots you in the back of the head. It's just bad news if you're trying to get in on the cheap. Lots of space up here. Lots of turrets. All of the actual turrets, like large gun turrets that you can have on a capital vessel, are on this capital vessel. So if you can have 4 minigun turrets, there are 4 minigun turrets. If you can have 4 cannon turrets, there are 4 cannon turrets. You may not like the locations that I've placed them, but you can always remove them and place them in areas that are more to your liking. The important thing is they're all on the ship, so you don't have to worry about making any more turrets in order to get the most out of what you're allowed to have on the ship. So that's something to keep in mind. Because I was doing a lot of building in space on this ship, I have the exterior access to the oxygen station surrounded in armored glass, and basically just sits here so you can fill up your oxygen tank without having to go inside of the ship, which happens to be needed a lot more than filling up your health. So that's the only reason why it's there. We've got the radar, of course, very important. More turrets, descent thrusters, all that stuff. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to hop into one of the cockpits, and we're going to take a look around the ship so that you can see it from the outside and from a bit of a distance to get an idea of the aesthetic of the whole thing. Because of its size, it's very difficult to otherwise gauge whether or not you like the looks of it, because it's just too big to take it all in at once. So if we go like this, and we go like this, and then we go like that, we can kind of take a look around. Most of the detailing in terms of texture and paint went onto the sides of the ship and the hangar. The top of the ship, as you can see, there's some detail, and I'm happy with it. When I look at it, I think, yeah, I'm happy with that layout, but it's specifically designed to be not too busy. It's still all combat steel. It's all painted gloss gray as the base, and then I went around and I did more detailing in various different places just to kind of spruce it up a little bit. And the end result is probably, I would say, in my opinion, my personal preference, this is the best looking combat vessel that I've made to date. And I'm looking forward to topping that at some point in the future. But for now, I'm pretty happy with it. You can even see a tiny little bit of blue hiding in a couple of different places down there just to break up the all gray environment. So the blueprint, like I say, will be linked in the information box below the video. If you want to be notified about future builds that I do and the videos that I do about those builds and other things that I do, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are also in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.